Hey, welcome to Wrestling What Ifs, the series where we take your favorite gimmicks, storylines, and rumors, and then we turn them upside down by asking the golden question, what if? Today we're talking about what if the 173-0 streak of Goldberg was ended by someone other than Kevin Nash. Now there's been several fan candidates out there for this position, but I think I have one man in mind. Due to how over he was with the fans, his ability to be a worthy champion, and he was a believable threat to the streak. I'm going to give myself a self-high five and go ahead and say DDP Diamond Dallas Page. That's right, DDP is going to be the man to end the streak. Now we all know that DDP gave Goldberg a run for his money at Halloween Havoc 1998, but in this alternate version we're going to keep the title change and streak ending happening at Starrcade. So you may ask yourself, well, who does Goldberg beat at Halloween Havoc instead of DDP? The simple answer is going to be the total package Lex Luger. Lex and Goldberg had never squared off against each other, and it would work well storyline-wise as Goldberg was feuding with NWO Hollywood, who in turn were halfway feuding with NWO Wolfpack, which Luger was a member of. Now, with there not being a huge storyline involving DDP and Goldberg at our Halloween Havoc anyway, we can throw in Luger without changing too much else up. Though, for the sake of every fan ever, and because I have the power here, we're going to go ahead and say that awful Hogan and Warrior match earlier in the night was at least decent, and for good measure, there's no broadcast cutoff. That's right, in our universe, Halloween Havoc 98 does not get cut off. The entire match between Luger and Goldberg is seen by fans that same night, and it's much the same as the original, albeit a little shorter because of Luger and Goldberg's limited repertoire of moves. Goldberg, of course, goes over and continues his streak. Flash forward to Starrcade, and we get the gem of DDP versus Goldberg. DDP goes over with a surprise diamond cutter. Now, it's going to be the second or third diamond cutter of the night, allowing Goldberg to still seem tough after kicking out of one or two previously, but ultimately he's going to lose. The ending's going to make sense because the diamond cutter was booked as one of those out-of-nowhere moves, and it could theoretically end the streak without making Goldberg look weak, just surprised. Boom, there we have it. New WCW World Heavyweight Champion, Diamond Dallas Page. Okay, flash forward to the first Nitro of the new year. It's 1999 and DDP is the champion. Now we got to make sense of current storylines as well as continue with what we've changed. And honestly, it's all pretty simple. In our world, we had the finger poke of doom, causing audiences to cringe and ultimately bringing the NWO Wolfpack and NWO Hollywood together. Well, in this alternate universe, no finger poke of doom. We have a main event of DDP versus Goldberg, and it's a rematch from Starrcade, of course. The same story is in our world, with Goldberg getting arrested for aggravating stalking, and it's alluded that Hogan, who has just returned, is responsible for the incident. Nash, who is a pseudo-babyface at the time, volunteers to replace Goldberg, for the fans, of course, and the match goes down and it's a decent show until Hogan and Scott Hall show up. Fans think that Hogan is there to continue his feud with Nash, but he hits DDP and allows Nash to win as the three men celebrate uniting the NWO factions. Everybody, of course, is pissed off. But Flair, who beat Bischoff in the rematch from Starrcade, is now in control of WCW for the next 90 days. He shows up, nullifies the victory, and then he drops this bomb. He just got back from the police station, Goldberg was released, and then boom, Goldberg hits the ring, scattering Hogan, Nash, and Hall, and uniting with DDP against the common enemy. The next week, on Nitro, Bischoff comes out with Hogan, Nash, and Hall and declares the NWO back together and that it's war on WCW once again. Bischoff continues stating that Flair may have control of the WCW, but Bischoff still has control of the NWO and their contracts, so Flair could try to make a match for the NWO members, but they would only compete if Bischoff agrees. Flair appears at the entrance, flanked by DDP and Goldberg, and offers to battle Nash, Hogan, and Hall with Goldberg and DDP as his partners. Eric, of course, is going to duck the offer and would state that it would have to be sold out. Flair agrees, and over the next week or so, the NWO would trim its member size as some would be kicked out while others would jump ship. Sting, of course, he's rejoined with WCW, while Luger, he stays with the NWO. And by sold out, the NWO would be comprised of Hogan, Hall, Nash, Luger, Scott Steiner, Buff Bagwell, Eric Bischoff, and the ever-present Vincent. The B team's going to be totally disbanded. Flash forward to Sold Out. Now you have the following matches involving WCW versus NWO members. Sting battles Lex Luger, The Giant and Randy Savage battle Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell, and DDP Flair and Goldberg take on Hall, Nash, and Hogan for the main event. Now, of course, that match is going to end in a giant brawl between all the NWO and their opponents for the night. It's leaving no victor and no conclusion to the rivalry yet. Typical WCW booking at the time, I know. Over the next couple weeks, Hogan and Bischoff would campaign for a title shot against DDP. Flair comes out and announces that Hogan could only get a title shot if he could beat Goldberg in a match that night. Of course, the Hogan vs. Goldberg rematch would be decent, but rather short as Nash and Hall would interfere, giving Hogan the win. Flair, being a man of his word, would keep it since he didn't include a no-interference stipulation, and he schedules a match for DDP vs. Hogan at Super Brawl in a steel cage so there can't be any interferences. And in an effort to give Goldberg revenge, he schedules a match between Nash and Hall versus Goldberg and a mystery partner. Now at Super Brawl, the mystery partner is revealed. And who is it? Macho Man Randy Savage. Now, of course, they go over Hall and Nash, and while during the main event, Bischoff tries to help Hogan, but is laid out by Flair, and DDP comes out victorious, retaining his title and getting a pretty good match out of Hogan. Now, the next Nitro, Bischoff comes out exclaiming that Flair's reign is soon to be over, and when that happens, the NWO will once again be on top. DDP enters with Flair, and they challenge Hogan and Bischoff to a double or nothing match, where if they lose, Hogan gets the title and Flair leaves WCW for good. But if they win, Hogan has to be the one to leave WCW, and Flair is given control of WCW for life. Now Bischoff agrees to the match, and it's scheduled for Uncensored. Meanwhile, Goldberg is still on a tear and destroys Buff Bagwell and Scott Steiner in a 2-on-1 match that night. It allows Goldberg to still look like a beast and continue his storyline feud against the NWO. Savage will battle Luger, while Sting stays at ringside to make sure there are no interferences. At Uncensored, the matches are as follows. Goldberg battles Luger for the U.S. Championship and wins, while Savage and Sting are going to battle Bagwell and Steiner. Hall and Nash go 2-on-1 against the Giant, who recently won the tag team titles by himself. Goldberg beats Luger, starts his reign as U.S. champ, while Savage and Sting get counted out after Vincent hits Sting with a bat while the ref's back is turned. As for the main event, Bischoff and Hogan lose in a decisive fashion. Hogan is gone from WCW for the time being, and the era of Flair begins. Now this allows for the storylines to become less NWO focused as they needed to be at that time, and they become just another faction. At the Great American Bash 99, we get a Goldberg vs. DDP rematch, where Goldberg puts up his U.S. title and DDP puts up the WCW title. Now, most would expect Goldberg to get the win, but again he's caught off guard and loses. The next night they battle again, but just for the U.S. title, which DDP drops to him. Goldberg goes on to feud with Booker T, who is a rising star at the time, while DDP goes into a feud with Randy Savage, followed by Sting. Now, DDP is going to drop the belt to Bret Hart at Halloween Havoc that year, and of course they're going to tear the roof off of the place. Goldberg would have risen to the top again by that time, and he would have improved his in-ring skills, allowing for a match between Hart and Goldberg at Starrcade, where Goldberg would win and enter 2000 as the WCW champion. Now, that's where I'm going to end this alternate reality tale. WCW in the late 90s and early 2000s is a hotly debated topic, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who think I'm entirely wrong. And that's fine. Like always, whether you think that this could be, or it's just a fantasy. This is just one fan's opinion of what if. Thanks for watching, and if you like what you saw, comment, click the like button, subscribe, and even click that notification icon. Now, thanks again, and I'll see you next time for another episode of What If.